All right. So I'm going to get started. I'm going to start by spotlighting my video. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Stepping Up Your Fundraising webinar. My name is Brendan. I'm the Marketing Director at Fundraising. And we are one of the founding members of the Us and Us Collective. The Us and Us Collective are we're here to talk about tech, the third sector, and sorry, just getting my notes up, and to help organisations put their best foot forward in changing the world and delivering all your missions. We've been joined so far across the year by WWF, Alzheimer's Research, Acting for Children, Pancreatic Cancer UK, Cancer Research UK, and we've had industry experts from WPNC, More Strategic, Rossify, Find a Race, and Lightful. And today we're delighted to be having Ovarian Cancer Action and ABF, the Soldiers Charity, joining that list. And of course, having our co-founders, Massive and Emily, returning today to co-host. So thank you very much. So here are your speakers. I mentioned I'm Brendan, the Marketing Director at Fundraising. Guys, could you introduce yourselves in order of the screen? Charlotte, could you say hi?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte. So I am the Community and Challenge Events Fundraising Manager at Ovarian Cancer Action.
And Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily Clayton and I'm the Marketing Director at Massive.
And Steve.
And good morning everybody, I'm Steve Oatley and I'm the Head of Events at ABF, the Soldiers Charity.
Great, thank you. So our agenda today, we're going to talk about a little bit of, I'm going to do a brief introduction and kind of just cover ground, which I'm sure we all know about what 2020 has been so far for us all. And then Charlotte is going to talk about her experience in transitioning to virtual. Emily is going to talk about some quick wins in adopting virtual, and Steve is going to talk about how he's been using virtual to boost his supporter care and his virtual events. And we're going to just do some questions and answers at the end. So please do, at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A tab. Please do make sure to use that tab and add in your questions throughout the session. And please don't hold back. We will monitor them throughout, and you should be able to see them and upvote them if you agree with them. So and that will really help us order the questions as we go. Okay, so 2020, what we know, the new normal, the new giving normal continues. As we know, COVID has changed fundraising, and it goes without saying that we've all seen an incredible amount of virtual events and just general kind of change in behaviour this year. And I think in many cases it might not have been that surprising to see charities kind of falling back on the virtual event scene when they couldn't do their events face to face. And I think we also saw some charities choosing not to necessarily engage with virtual straight away and write 2020 off. And for those organisations, it may have been a surprise to see large events like the Prudential Ride London and London Marathon now go virtual. And it's possible that that's why we're starting to see people talking about transitioning live events, almost like a second wave of virtual events now. I'd say it's fair to say that the events industry, at the very least, has fallen back onto virtual and seen the virtues of virtual and digital, and the non-profits are starting to follow the same suit. I thought what I'd do is I'd just talk about how virtual fundraising can kind of come across into a bit of a spectrum. And on that spectrum, there are a couple of extremes. You've got your kind of, your bespoke tailored events. And here I've got the May 50K, which was an event organised by MS Research Australia, and then slightly later by MS International Federation across the world. So that was a bespoke event. It was entirely tailored, and that was, they had total control of it. Then you've got a different sort of event. You've got the sector-wide pre-made events, such as the 2.6 Challenge, which is, incredibly accessible and very low maintenance. And I'm just going to kind of help kind of go through those a little bit. So the 2.6 challenge, one of the things that really brought that out was that the supporter had total creative freedom. It was inspired by the closing of large events and across the charity sector's fundraising, and we all know that the 2.6 challenge was kind of led by a consortium of organisations across the UK's charity sector. There were loads of people involved, different platforms, different creative groups, and it ended up being a national fundraising campaign that inspired a lot of people to do a lot of different things, and they were able to take the campaign and run with it. They were able to do whatever they wanted in terms of, as long as it related back to 2.6. So they could do 26 selfies or 2,600 steps a day. In fact, our own COO Keith did 260 miles, I think, on a cycle. So I mean, that's just it. You really can take it as far as you want. And actually, just to add some value to this bit, I've put a link on the screen here for our free white paper that we did with Studio Republic, who were one of the creative teams behind the 2.6 challenge. That's a really positive white paper. It looks into the benefits of supportive freedom. So take note of that. I'll add it into a summary email as well. But yeah, fundraising.co/2.6 beyond. So the May 50K, as I mentioned, a large international 50K run. The ask was incredibly simple, but because the ask is so simple, it masks the complexity and intricacy of an immersive supporter experience. And actually, what we've got there is a very well delivered custom dashboard, gamification badges, email triggers, and shareable resources. And the standout thing here is that there is an immersive, clear-cut messaging that really brings out the tone of the supporters and what they want to do. The idea of wanting to leave your limits behind, and the idea of wanting to leave MS where it belongs, really kind of ties people into that kind of messaging, and that's incredibly valuable. Oh, what's happening here? Oh, so I apologize for my image not displaying here. This is I wanted to bring out this event as well. This was a nice picture of some of the supporters socially distancing incredibly responsibly, but also doing an awesome job. So Wexford Relay for Life transitioned their live event earlier this year, and a quote from them before they actually delivered their event was, "We feel the €55,000 goal is more realistic given the continued restrictions of COVID." And then after they delivered their event, where they actually raised more than the previous year's live event, I said, we're totally blown away by it. Not only did we have actually met the same amount, we raised as much as on our 2019 event, we've managed to maintain the connection with our fundraisers. And this kind of further reinforces that the golden thread between these events is all about the communications with your supporters and being in tune with what they're saying. So these three campaigns, all very different, all very different versions of virtual. They've had very different experiences, and they've probably provided different experiences, but they've also all been in tune, and they understand with their supporters and where they're coming from. The sector-wide event actually offers supporters a chance to create a personalized experience. The May 50K creates the immersion for the user, for the supporter, and the transition event, Wexford Relay for Life, was an event that was already very popular with their supporters, and when they moved it over in a way that was, excuse me, in tune and considerate to their needs. So when they announced it to their team leaders, they understood and they were comfortable, and they went to the website and instantly felt a sense of belonging. Just before I pass on, I want to, I was talking to Keith, who some of you might be familiar with. He's normally with us on these calls, but he is taking an appropriate chance to get away with his family right now. But he got in touch with me, and we had a chat about virtual fatigue. I know that a lot of people have actually mentioned that in their little registration question that I'd asked about challenges that you're facing in fundraising. So Keith has mentioned a few points here. the first is that don't be put off by fatigue, right? So virtual is still a very viable solution, and it may be harder than a few months ago because there's a lot more out there. People are still doing things, but actually there are so many charities out there that still think of virtual as just a 5K or like just effectively a way to combine Strava with your fundraising page, when actually the technology behind that has really evolved, and there's really a lot of opportunity out there now to do events, be they bake-offs, bake-offs, pet challenges, selfie sharing, live streams, gamer challenges, obviously cycles, sports related things too, which do use the typical kind of Strava stuff. But it really is just about keeping it meaningful, fun, and remembering that actually we've all been battling giving fatigue for a number of years actually, and that not a great deal has actually changed in this time. So don't be too put off by the idea of virtual fatigue. And his final point was that organizations really should really plan to thrive. We can't all stay in survival mode right now. We need to be thinking in terms of what can we do to be delivering the, what we want to be doing, our missions, and the best thing for us, not for our staff, for our teams, for our supporters, for our people, and what can we do to get there? And those things are, almost always going to be about being smart, creative, adaptive, and bold. And the organizations that can be those things and embody those things are the organizations that are going to move forwards the best. My final takeaway before I pass on to Charlotte is virtual fundraising is always best when in tune with your audience. It is a very real, so it's a very real solution, especially given event closures and postponements. But it is also a fantastic way to having that attunement with your supporters and understanding where your supporters are coming from is actually the best way to achieve any kind of brand cut through, because there's no point trying to please everyone right now, and it is all about making sure that you resonate with your existing audiences and deliver something which means something to them, and that's how you will see some real uptake. Okay, Charlotte, over to you.
Great, thanks, Brendan. So I am going to talk about our experience at OCA over the past 6 months or so of transitioning to virtual, particularly on our flagship community fundraising campaign, which is Walk in Her Name. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we did something similar with Women v Cancer, which is a partnership that we are part of with Joe Cervical Cancer Trust, Breast Cancer Now, and Dream Challenges. So casting our minds back to March this year, this is what we expected March to look like for us. This is what Walk in Her Name usually looks like. As a community campaign, it has two components really. We have an ask for our supporters to organise their own sponsored walks, and we also invite our supporters to a walk hosted by OCA in London, usually in a London park. And so very quickly it became clear that that wasn't going to be possible for us this year. And we had to kind of let go of what we did have planned. And we were left with the question of, what do we do now? Our event had to be cancelled, and our supporters pretty much had to cancel all of their walks as well. And we had that question, what do we do now? And for us, it was quite clear that virtual would be the way to go. We'd never done a virtual fundraiser before, aside from kind of Facebook fundraisers and stewarding those supporters. We'd never done a virtual campaign, but it seemed that we had two things to consider. We needed to do something very quickly, and virtual seemed like it could do that for us. And we had the capabilities within the team to create the platform, put the messaging together, and get a proposition together. And that was kind of what we could turn around in that quick time. And the other thing was that if we were ever going to test virtual, it was now. And so what we came up with, the campaign that we had, was the step challenge. Oh, I've got one too many. Getting click happy. There we go. So we came up with our campaign of Walk in Her Name, the step challenge. And so it looked very different to what we expected Walk in Her Name to look like, or how it has looked for years whilst it's been running. And essentially we asked our supporters to walk 295,000 steps during the month of May and to raise £295. So we picked that number because 295,000 is the number of diagnoses of ovarian cancer worldwide in a year. So we had an activity to ask our supporters to do, and we had a cause-led message, and we had a fit. And so these are some of our lovely supporters out doing their step challenge. And what we found was that it actually exceeded our expectations. And some of our preconceptions about virtual were changed as well. And our supporters went above and beyond. So what we did and what we found worked well was that we obviously really changed and adapted, like we've all been doing for the past 6 months or so. We completely changed the activity of the campaign. It was now a step challenge instead of people gathering and doing walks together. But we kept the key principles of the campaign, which essentially were walking for women affected by ovarian cancer and raising money. And our supporters really came along on that journey with us. We also listened and were really sensitive to how our supporters might be feeling. We ran the step challenge in May, which was still a real time of uncertainty and quite a lot of anxiety for everyone with everything changing. And we didn't want to ask too much of our supporters. We also wanted to be really inclusive. We were aware that, of course, a large portion of our audience were patients, so they were shielding at this time and they weren't able to go out. So we wanted to make sure the activity was suitable for them as well. So we always encouraged and let people know that they could do something indoors, run up and down your stairs, run up and down your garden, or if for the people who are able to go out once a day at that time, you can do that too. And we always said with the fundraising message as well, we put the £295 target on there, which we felt a little bit cheeky of. It's quite a little bit ambitious, we felt at the time. But we always said, however much you're able to give, we know it's a difficult time. We're really grateful for your support. And we were honest with our supporters as well about the fact that events had been cancelled and the charity was facing a significant income loss this year, like so many charities are. And then essentially we also kept it really simple. The name of the campaign wasn't super creative or groundbreaking. Step Challenge does what it says on the tin, and the activity wasn't particularly new either. People were kind of familiar with the kind of target of 10,000 steps a day. And we just kept it simple, and that seemed to really work. I think it also potentially cut through the chaos and all the confused messaging that everyone was feeling at that time. And by keeping it really simple, it enabled us to communicate and get our message across to our supporters. And then, so moving on to Women v Cancer, one of the events in the series of Women v Cancer is Ride the Night. So that is a 100-kilometre cycle through central London at night, and it's about 1,000 women that take part in that each year. So obviously that wasn't going to go ahead this year. It was due for May, but had to be cancelled. And we set about trying to come up with a virtual campaign. And for this, it was quite a different scenario. Women v Cancer is a really adventurous, really sociable audience. So it was quite a leap to take those women on a journey, to ask them to do something potentially by themselves, because it's got to be socially distanced, and at home, instead of jetting off to Thailand or Costa Rica, where they would usually be doing their cycle trips. And so to do that, what we did was we kept it flexible, similar to the Step Challenge. We gave people a 10-day window at the end of July to do 100 kilometres your way. And we opened it up from cycling, so you could also run or walk. And we said, if we knew that in that audience, there would be women who haven't done a Women v Cancer event for years, or women who are real cycling enthusiasts. And we saw that in the activities that they did. So some of them did 100k in a day, and some of them took the 10 days to do 10k a day and complete their 100k. So we found that that helped us really engage with them, and it helped people to get involved in a way that was suitable for them at that time. We also used it as an opportunity for engagement. At this time, the comms that we were putting out to that audience was pretty much about cancelled trips, transfers, or refunds. And Women v Cancer is usually such a positive community, really adventurous, and there's real camaraderie around it. So our virtual campaign enabled us to put kind of a positive boost in our comms and talk about something really positive and show how they could get involved, and also create that community again and give them that kind of socialization that they do get from being part of Women v Cancer. So we very much got on the phones, we shared video messages, we collected photos and quotes from everyone, and enabled people to connect in that way instead. And then what was also interesting for Women v Cancer was the way that we worked as a team in the project group. We had to really, in that transition, we had to adapt how we work together. The charities, for instance, got a lot more involved in stewardship. We picked up the phone to everyone before, during and after the event, because it was a very different project to sending people on those trips. And I think that's definitely something that we will take forward as kind of a project group between the charities and Dream Challenges. So at OCA, we will be staying virtual. We have plans for our STEP challenge next year, and we have also developed our second in-house virtual fundraiser, which is the Research Relay, which we're working on at the moment. And some of the things that we found was that for us, virtual fundraising was actually accessible for us as a small charity. There's only 15 members of staff at OCA, and we found that it wasn't potentially as expensive as we thought, and we did have the skills within our team to create something virtual. I think maybe there was a preconception of, we are a small charity, it's only big charities that have these virtual campaigns because they have people that focus on digital fundraising or something like that. But actually it was doable for us. And we also found that being forced to test it so quickly in the circumstances in March, there was an appetite for it amongst our supporters, which is brilliant. And that means that we now have something new that we can offer to our supporters. And it also opens up new potential for us. So we, like I say, will be taking them forward next year, and we can be flexible and adapt them and dial them up and down as we need to. I think it also gives us that contingency that we all kind of need at the moment if the situation changes again. And it's certainly something that we'll continue with. And then my final takeaway really was just to say that it's, when you are going virtual, when you're transitioning to virtual, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think you don't need to be intimidated by virtual fundraising. We kept it very simple. And as long as you start with your context that you're working in, your cause and your supporters, it's about finding the campaign or the activity that is the right fit for your organisation and for your supporters. And we found that worked really well. I've whizzed through a lot there, but if anyone does have any questions, put them in the Q&A below, or if anyone wants to chat further, I'm always happy to connect on LinkedIn, so always happy to chat. And I'll hand over to Emily.
Brilliant, thanks so much for that, Charlotte. And wonderfully, there was many things that Charlotte's just talked about there that really back up what I'm going to say, which is exactly what we would want. Hang on. So I'm going to be talking today about some quick wins in virtual fundraising. And for anyone who joined one of these webinars back in April when we first kind of started talking about this, you will have heard some of these things before, but actually what I wanted to do today is focus on almost the quickest wins you know, in the context of how much that market has changed since we first started talking. There are obviously so many more virtual propositions out there. So what I really wanted to focus on is the fact that so many of them, like what Charlotte's just talked about and some of the examples that Brendan gave as well, what they all did is act really quickly and got out there quickly. So I'm going to focus on the things that you can do really quickly to join that. So the first area that I wanted to talk about is what does success look like? And I think this is really key for beginning to think about what your virtual fundraiser is going to do. You really need to work with your internal stakeholders and agree what that success criteria is. And there can be many different criteria, and I'm sure there'll be many different views from across your stakeholders as well. So it could be that you want to fill a short-term income gap. It could be that you want to develop your fundraising portfolio and have a virtual element in there that is going to be there for the long term. Depending what that criteria is, will dictate different KPIs for that. So really understanding from everyone what they think the virtual fundraiser is going to do and what success looks like for them will be key to start with. And then once you've got all of that criteria, the next really key stage will be to prioritise it. So a virtual fundraiser, and especially one that you want to get out in the market quite quickly, isn't going to be able to achieve all of the success criteria that many different stakeholders are asking for. If you want something that's going to bring in some income in year to fill an income gap, for example, then you might need to accept a different ROI than a product that you might want to develop to have a longer term part of your portfolio. So really being able to understand what is the main thing that you want this virtual fundraiser to do, certainly to get out there quickly in its kind of first iteration, will be really key. And then the third area around what success looks like is being able to measure that success. So if you're going to kind of set out that criteria and the different KPIs, you need to be able to measure it to be able to dictate whether that test and whether the virtual fundraiser that you've launched has been successful or not. So if you can't measure it, then it shouldn't be one of your success criteria, would be my recommendation. And alongside that, there's the measuring of your virtual fundraiser from some of the key KPIs, but it's also really important to keep track of other factors that are happening at the same time. Obviously, during lockdown, that will have a different impact on potentially how many people might sign up to a virtual fundraiser than now, where lockdown has eased slightly and there's other things that people can start doing. So I think it's really important to keep track of the external factors that are happening as well that could impact on your test, and would be really key to make sure you understand when reviewing it at a later date. Sorry, the slide is tiny to move on. So once you've understood the success criteria that has been set out, that really forms the basis of you being able to go away and start thinking about what the actual idea should be. Now, this is something that has been mentioned a couple of times already this morning, and is something that we always talk about when looking at developing new propositions, and that is knowing your audience. And this is absolutely key for a quick win and being able to develop a really quick virtual fundraiser to get out into the market. If you want to get something out there quicker or quickly, then your warm audience is going to be key, and that's going to be the quickest win. So you really need to know who your audience are, what they're already doing for you, what their wants and needs might be, again, in the different environment that we might be in right now versus pre-COVID, and therefore how the virtual fundraiser that you're developing could help meet those needs and those motivations. So being able to really understand your audience from the insight that you already have, but also looking at things like social listening, using your Facebook pages to see what your audience might be talking about, and again, measuring and keeping track of the tests that you put out there will be really key to be able to ensure that your virtual fundraiser is going to meet their needs. The second point is cause, and this is something that Charlotte talked about brilliantly just before. Your warmest audience, who is going to be the quickest audience to attract into your virtual fundraiser, are likely to be supporting your charity because of your cause. So you need to be able to make that cause relevant to the proposition that you're putting out there. So there was a brilliant example that Charlotte talked about with the 295 stat. So being able to bring that into the virtual fundraiser means that you're attracting that warm audience, and they know that even if there are, we've talked about fatigue, for example, if there are lots of different propositions out there, they're going to choose yours because it's the cause that they want to support, and you've talked about that in your proposition, and you've made it core to what your virtual fundraiser is. And then the third, again, that Charlotte mentioned already, is keeping it a really simple ask. So to make it a quick win and to get something out there quickly, this isn't really the time to be developing something completely new and innovative. If you want to get something out there, it needs to be something that is already a thing that people understand. And again, talking about kind of the cost that might be associated with getting a virtual fundraiser live, if you want to keep your costs lower, then you need to keep your messaging simple and your marketing simple, so that it's really understood from the outset what the fundraiser is and what we're asking people to do. I think really what you need to be thinking is, when your audience are coming and seeing the virtual fundraiser, they need to be thinking, I know what this activity is, and it's for a cause that I want to support, so I'm going to do it. That's not to say that there isn't room in the market for innovation and for kind of the use of all the brilliant technology that's out there and developing new and different propositions. However, for a quick win, I think you really need to go with something that's already in existence and that people understand. So then, once we've launched the idea, I think the first point here is about minimum viable product. And that's really just focusing on the fact that when you're launching a virtual fundraiser and you want to get something out there quickly, it doesn't need to be the fully polished product. It should be usable, it should be understood, it should be, have a good user experience once you sign up. But it doesn't need to be fully polished. In fact, I would recommend that it isn't for a quick win, because this is where you can get something out there and actually start learning and understanding how your supporters and your audiences are interacting with it, to be able to start iterating and testing and developing it further. So getting something out there in MVP version and being able to test and learn from that will be really key for a quick win. So then leading on from that, the second point would be to review what's happening. So there's loads of brilliant ways that you can do this when you've launched something in MVP. So you can see how people are interacting with the fundraiser. You can look at various stats and tests online to see, where people might be dropping off of the journey, any questions that they're asking on social media, the way that they're talking about the virtual fundraiser. That can be stuff that is really valuable to be able to pull their product back in and make some changes and get that back out there again. So that could be things like, if there's lots of the same question coming through to your customer services, then include that as an FAQ on your webpage. Just start making those small changes to iterate, so that you're building on that product all of the time. So that leads on to the kind of the iteration part there, which, having that product actually live and being able to test and iterate, both in terms of the product, but also in terms of the marketing campaign, will be really key for a quick win. Actually being able to take all of that live insight as the product is out there and build on that will be really valuable, and will help you to, keep that product going and learning from it as it goes through. So that's kind of my sort of 3 areas of quick wins around virtual fundraisers. And as I said, it really kind of goes hand in hand with the stuff that Charlotte has already been saying. And I'm sure is going to lead wonderfully into what Steve's going to talk about as well. So I will hand over to Steve.
Thanks, Emily. Great. I'm just going to take over, hopefully. 1 second. There we go. Great. So I am going to talk a bit more about supporter engagement in the virtual arena. Just a bit of context and setting the scene first, because I do think it's relevant to who we are and what we try to do. We are known as ABF the Soldiers Charity, but we were formerly the Army Benevolent Fund, and we are very much behind the scenes charity. We don't do any campaigning, we don't take any stances on anything. We're just there as the Army's national charity, sitting in the background, making sure that anyone that's been in the Army, or anyone who has their direct family members, if they need help, that we're there for them. We've got very low brand awareness, and actually for us, events is our gateway for us. So I joined in 2010, I've been there nearly 10 years now, which was just after we'd rebranded. Our audience is very much the national service generation. And so they are the old and the bold, for want of a better expression. and definitely have their ways of doing things and their opinions on everything. But events are a way to try and engage a new audience. So it is really trying to move our charity forward as part of our events program. Virtual for us sits alongside our program. We've been running virtual events for 3 years now. Our biggest virtual event is called Operation Bletchley, which is a virtual code breaking challenge. So it's taken all that iconography and storytelling around spies and British military intelligence, and we've pitched the whole thing in the Second World War. And if you sign up, you're a secret agent, and you've got to cover the 50 miles between Bletchley Park and the Cabinet War Rooms. So along the way, you meet lots of secret agents, all of them real people who did incredible things during the war. And they give you a code, and you've got to crack the code. And all of those codes add up to a message that you need to deliver to Winston Churchill. We've tried to make it a really immersive experience throughout the month of July when it takes place. And it's something that has worked very, very well for us. We launched it last year in 2019, and it's really grown and developed. This July, we had over 3,000 people take part in the event, and it's going to raise over £100,000, which is far, far beyond our expectations. It's brilliant. But where that sits with the rest of our events program, because I still have hope that our live events are going to come back, and safety is always the priority when we're delivering any events, and so it's just another element that we need to be aware of. Operation Bletchley is 50 miles over a month. We've got the Cateran Yomp, which is a 54-mile walk in 24 hours up in Scotland. That's a real community event. Not community in the sense of community fundraising, but in it's groups of people who either served together or in a running club together or went to school together or in cadets together, coming up together and really doing this challenge together. And it's the competitiveness between them, but then the team support between them as well. And then the Frontline Walk, which is another very interesting one, which is has got both a physical element and a virtual element. And so the two sit hand in hand. It's a 100-kilometre walk. For the live event, historically, we've gone over to France, and we've traced the route of the trench lines in northwest France into Belgium, 100 kilometres over 3 days. An incredible story where people learn more about their own family history. They discover stories of people who fought 100 years ago. And it's an incredibly strong community that has built up around that. The virtual event encourages people to go out and discover their own family history and to visit their own local war memorials. Both of the First and the Second World War really affected every single community across the country, definitely, but even around the world. We've had people taking part from lots of different countries. And to realise that the people that went and fought in these wars came from your local village or went to your local school or, you know, worked in the same bank as you pop into on a Friday afternoon, is an incredibly powerful experience. And to go and discover those stories and learn is an amazing, rewarding experience for somebody. And so it's about us providing the tools for people to be able to do that. We've had a very strong focus on the brands for each of these events because we don't have a big main charity brand awareness. I don't think many people wake up in the morning and think, what can I do to support ABF, the Soldiers Charity today? It's an affiliation rather than a cause. People feel very, very passionate about the military and supporting veterans. There's lots of different military organisations that do lots of amazing work. And so really the event is the thing that they join and they get involved in, and then we can tell our charity story once they're in through the door. We've been quite successful in developing it in our office, which we haven't been to for a little while. We've got Tattoo Corner, which is the people, our participants, who have got our event logos or event names tattooed onto themselves, which is a sign of loyalty. None of the events team yet, but I'm here today. But actually, it's a huge team effort to help deliver this, and the team have been incredible. And no, that they're the people that have made the difference to this. That's great. The main thing I'm going to talk about today is actually, it's really hard to recruit people to events. It's as hard to recruit people to virtual events as it is to recruit people to live events. And so what we've tried to do is build a range of brilliant events that appeal to different people. But once we've got people in through the door, how do we encourage them to come back? How do we encourage them to try a different event in our portfolio? And how do we recognise and reward loyalty? They're the kind of three questions we keep coming back to. We've had a look at the commercial sector, and this is something that brands are grappling with, regardless of which sector they work in. How can we get people to stick with us and to continue to support us and to engage more? And I just love the idea of these affiliation schemes. Why do people buy the same brand of tea for 15 years to cut out the tokens to get a small cuddly toy? Yorkshire tea, I think I've got the best ones. If you collect, this was in the 80s and 90s. If you collected 36 tokens, you bought 36 boxes of tea, cut out the tokens on each of them, attach them to this coupon collector, and then sent a small postage and packaging fee. Not only did you get a Yorkshire tea pot, you got some Yorkshire tea-shaped biscuits. And a lot of this was before social media, a lot of this was before Facebook groups, but just a brilliant way of rewarding loyalty and engaging people. A few years ago, we launched a program called the Fundraising Army. I think it's going to be too small for you to see all the detail on there, but essentially what happens is that as you sign up to any one of our challenge events, you become a private in our fundraising army. And as you raise money, you go up through the ranks. It's a way of introducing some friendly competition, a way of rewarding people. It's £100 to become a Lance Corporal, £250 for a Corporal, £500 for a Sergeant. What we found through launching this, and at first it only existed in event, so for each event you signed up to, you started as a private again, was that people weren't stopping on £220 or £480. They would want to send out another email or another communication or to do another activity to get to that next level up. This started in 2015, and one of my event managers, Viola, was a big driver in getting all of this started. And the aim was really to kind of increase average gifts, but we saw the huge potential to then develop this across events and to show the lifetime support. We don't do anything particularly different. It's essentially just a gamification badging system. You don't get anything for achieving sergeant level, apart from we do a post on Facebook with a promotions list every week, and on your final certificate, you are referred to as Staff Sergeant Rogers. The engagement has been fantastic. I'm going to show you a couple of things and how we managed to then develop it into a pan event. Just stop sharing for a second. So click. Here's how it looks in event now. So I've picked one of our top fundraisers because A, he's fantastic, and B, it's nice to see a high amount of fundraising. So this is his fundraising page, and you can see he's got his badges here with his different levels that fill in. He's just below major level. So as soon as he hits £5,000, that'll tick off. he'll get an email into his inbox saying, congratulations, you've been promoted to major. We've created a set of lovely little videos. We had a touring theatre company doing a First World War play, and we sent somebody with a film camera and got one of the actors to do dressed in an old English First World War suit, to be like, Captain, good news, congratulations, you've just been promoted to major. And it's the sort of thing that somebody can then share on their Facebook page and promote. And it's like, keep going, jolly good job, really trying to make it quite fun and lighthearted. And one of the things that we've actually been able to do, and in the last few months, because we've had a bit of time, is to be able to pull all of this together. And so when Terry logs into his page, he can see all of the events that he's done in the past. And we're now able to show him his overall rank of what he's achieved raising money for us as a charity. Really, at the moment, we're just scratching the surface of this stuff. I think there's so much more we can do. We'd love to be able to start bringing in regular giving, donate £5 a month, £10 a month to build up your ranks. How can we recognise volunteering in this as well? And how can we tailor it to a corporate audience as well to really help drive our corporate engagement? Yes, I've rattled through fundraising army stuff and I can talk about it for hours and hours. And so if people do have any questions, let me know. My final bit of advice is just because it's virtual doesn't mean you can't delight somebody. To show them they've been promoted, to show them that they've reached another milestone, and to celebrate their success. Virtual rewards is a wonderful way to engage people. And what we try to be throughout all of our events and through all of the experience is remarkable. And I use that word very deliberately, because what I want people to do is remark on it. I want them to go and tell their friends, their family, and to talk about what they're doing, because actually they're going to be the best influencers. They're going to be the people that get people into the events next time they come around. And that's how we try and grow and build and engage our audiences. And that's me. Handing back to Brandon.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thanks everyone. I was really insightful, and I love how there's just been this kind of consistent golden thread of being in touch with the audience, making sure that you are caring for them in the transition, and making sure that you are building that sense of community and like kind of providing that experience all the way through. And it just goes to show the value of that kind of experience. And it's really inspiring to see all the different things that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for coming on today and doing this. So we've got some questions that have been sent in advance of the session, but we've also got some questions coming in now. So to everyone watching, do jump into the Q&A tab, and if we run out of time for questions that were sent in advance, we will prioritize the ones for those in attendance right now, and then we will use those. Emily, are you up for doing this with me?
I am, yes. So thanks for the questions so far. We've got one for Charlotte, which is, how far in advance did you begin to promote your virtual events? Because we feel like there's a completely different lead time for a virtual event to a physical event.
Very good question. So with our step challenge, we developed the campaign in the space of about 2.5 weeks, which I wouldn't always recommend, but it was doable. And in terms of a lead time, so we launched the step challenge, and it's different depending on what you're asking people to do in the nature of your campaign. We launched the step challenge probably about 4 days before the 1st of May when the challenge started. And I think we were able to do that because the activity didn't require preparation, it didn't require training, and it didn't require too much decision from the supporter. The registration kind of process we had was nice and simple, so it was easy for people to kind of make that decision that they wanted to take part and to register. And I think that's why we almost got away with just doing kind of a four-day lead time and launch. For the research relay, we had the luxury of about a week lead time. So we had a little bit longer. But I think the kind of situation and circumstances that we're all in as fundraisers at the moment is why our lead times will be shorter. If when we're doing the step challenge next year, we give ourselves more time and we do more marketing. But I think virtual definitely does have a shorter lead time. If you can make it really easy for the person to make that decision, and the activity is fairly simple, then you don't need too much. It is doable in those kind of short time frames.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think it also, you know, going back to kind of what the success criteria is and sort of testing, I think the beauty of virtual, and if you are launching something as a test, means that if your success criteria, for example, is that you want to bring in income in September, so therefore you're going to be live in September, then that obviously changes your kind of lead time for launching, versus if you want to see whether a product has, if there's appetite for it, when you can put something out there, you can put that out there again at another time as well. So yeah, I think although there are different lead times for it, there's also less restrictions for it as well. Thank you. And then a question for Steve. So Emma says, the loyalty program is fantastic. Which agencies and fundraising platforms have you used in the development of your challenges?
So we are a relatively small charity. We don't work with big agencies and have big development budgets and things like that. The program was really initially started in-house. We have worked with a brilliant freelance designer called Pete Black. Happy to give him a shout out because he's done some amazing work for us. And he's helped us really kind of make sure that we are consistent and clean in our design process. From the technology side of things, probably won't surprise you all to hear, as I've been wheeled out to a talk by Fundraising, that we are on the Fundraising platform. And we've been able to use a lot of the gamification that's built into the platform, and just how flexible it is, in the sense that we can really create the experience that we want to by adding in email triggers, by having the badges with the different levels, by really displaying the information in the way that we want, in the way that we think will work best for our supporters. So yes, that's how we've done a lot of it.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Carl to us all, which is, where do we stand in thoughts about basically charging or having an entry fee for virtual fundraisers, and especially if it means getting a fundraising pack, maybe a t-shirt, medal, etc., versus free entry with a downloadable fundraising pack? And in our examples so far, you know, what have they been?
Yeah, so happy to jump on this one. So for the step challenge, we had a free entry, and we didn't offer a pack or materials or medals. Part of that reason was because we couldn't get to our office to get to our stock at the time, but we actually found that our supporters didn't ask for it. I think at the end of the campaign, we kind of took a moment and were like, oh yeah, we didn't do that, but actually supporters were like, oh, we should have done that. If we did it again, we would give more materials and more packs and things like that. But we found that actually our supporters didn't ask for it. As long as we were engaging with them, picking up the phone, acknowledging what they were doing, asking for how they're finding things, asking them to share their story and why they're taking part, we were able to still give them a great experience without the physical materials. As I say, if we were to do it again, we would add more things to that and give them a pack. And I think just generally across the sector, I think that people are happy to pay a registration fee if they can see kind of why they're paying that registration fee. If it is for a medal or something kind of physical and specific. I've seen other charities with their virtual events explicitly say, this is the reg fee, this much of it is to cover kind of charity's costs, and this much is specifically for your t-shirt or your medal. So I think both models work, and it depends on the journey you want to take people on and the type of activity you're asking people to do.
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that, and I think it comes back to knowing your audience again. And I think if it is, you know, warm supporters already, then they want to support you, so they probably can do without it. But if you are trying to attract a new audience, and especially so if we're using a running example, if you're trying to attract a new audience in that market, we know that, you know, runners like medals, so perhaps that is something that is a good value exchange for them. So yeah, I think I agree, both work. Anything from you on that, Steve?
And we've always charged for virtual events, just a fairly nominal fee. It does buy commitment from people into the project, and also it does mean that even if they then don't do anything from that point onwards, there's still a benefit in recruiting them. You are going to have, with any event, to drop out of people who sign up and then you never hear from them ever again. I think having sending out physical packs, when it comes to things like fundraising packs, we would never send out any physical packs like that for our virtual program. But there is an advantage in sending some physical items, so building some incentives into fundraising. An example for Operation Bletchley is that when somebody receives their first donation, they get an Operation Bletchley pencil. So it's trying to incentivize action with physical things. Again, with virtual events, often getting that first donation is a big challenge, and the activation levels can be a bit lower with virtual events from physical events. So how can you incentivize the activity that you want?
Great, thank you. And following on from that, we've had a question from Liam. So particularly to Charlotte, without having a physical pack, did you therefore create a digital fundraising pack, or provide online or virtual tools to enable fundraising online?
So we gave, we didn't have time, unfortunately, for the step challenge to create kind of digital tiles and things for social. That's something that we would love to do and we'll do in future. What we did do was create kind of messaging that people could use on social and gave them examples. So we kind of did the thought process for them. This is the message you can share on your social media. And we similarly had the gamification badges, which people could kind of share and shout about on social as well. So we kind of engage people that way. We also did have quite a kind of, we had a stewardship journey with 2 emails a week for the month. So they were always hearing from us and always getting kind of tips and content and stories that way. So whereas we didn't have the capability and capacity at the time to create assets, what we could do was do quite a like intensive almost stewardship journey over email. So we just worked with what we had and we could do in the time, really.
Great, thank you. And then probably our final question, looking at the time. So from Lizzie, she says, what have been your most successful marketing channels, and what's been the split between new and existing supporters signing up?
Shall I start on this one? So for us, our most successful marketing channel hasn't changed for the last few years. It has been Facebook. That's where we've been gaining new supporters. Just, I think because our audience is perhaps a bit older, Facebook is still very much the primary place where people are. And then because of the Instagram link as well, it's very easy to kind of cross promote on across that channel. We have done some Google advertising as well, but Facebook, every time we just come back to Facebook being the best way to recruit new supporters. But again, I think it's about that. Once you've got one supporter, how do you get them to go out and recruit 5 and 6 of their friends? Almost the firework effect of you send up the one, and then how can they go and get a team engaged there, get their school involved, get their workplace involved, and really trying to make that as easy as possible to get the most people. And then because events for us are a real gateway to the charity, we have a very large proportion of new supporters into each event. And that was one of the reasons that we looked at developing the fundraising army. How can we really encourage retention as well as continuing to recruit new supporters?
Great, thank you. Anything to add, Charlotte?
Yeah, so completely agree with what Steve was saying. One of the great things about virtual for us was that whereas with physical events, we would always be in touch with kind of that lead supporter who's organising their walk, for example, but we wouldn't be directly in touch with all their friends and family who attend their event. Whereas with virtual, each of those people signed up individually and joined their team, and we were able to build a relationship between that individual and the charity with their friends and family, which was really nice to do. So we had that relationship with that whole group instead of just the key initial supporter. So that was a lovely way to build our audience. We also found, I think that we had about 40% of our participants, I would say, were existing supporters, about 30% were new, and then we also really engaged with our kind of stakeholders. So the virtual STEP challenge was the first time that we'd really got our scientists and the lab teams involved in fundraising, and they really got on board, and it was a lovely way to engage with them because all they had to do was sign up online. They didn't have to travel to a physical event or something like that. So that was actually kind of almost a new channel for us, in that we really asked them to get involved in the same way as our usual supporters. But for us, same as Steve was saying, social ads were where we got our new audience from and those new supporters for the virtual. So, yeah.
Great, thank you.
Can I jump in with something? One of the things that I didn't want to jump in through the earlier questions just because I didn't want to take any time away from Steve and Charlotte's brilliant answers. There's one campaign that's going on the fundraising platform at the moment, which I think is incredibly relevant to some of the questions that have been coming forward, and it's called Paugust. And it's I think it's, if you stick it in Google, it's like the word August but with paw instead, and it's a pet challenge. And I think what it really neatly displays is how virtual can be quite flexible. And the challenge in this case is you're taking your dog out for a walk every day of the month of August. But also, they similarly to Steve have used gamification badges, but they've also done quite a different feel, which I think will help kind of give you a sense of quite how broad and how different tone can really help engage different audience, different people. And there was another question about entry fees. It sparked my interest because there's also this idea, I think Steve, you mentioned the idea about incentivizing people to do certain behaviors. And what Paugust actually does do that with various prizes, fundraising prizes. And that's always another route that you can go down in terms of kind of giving people who raise £250 a t-shirt or something, and giving people who raise £500 a pedometer or something like that, and kind of going down that kind of a road. It just struck me as an option which is available if your supporters may not be as warm to the idea about paying something up front. But yeah, that was just my 2 cents. I didn't want to squeeze it in during all your answers. I reckon we should round off to a close because we're 5 minutes over time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Steve, Charlotte, and Emily, you've been amazing. Thank you for what has to be one of the most interesting sessions I've seen in a while. Thank you so much. So everyone who's attended today, thanks for joining. Please remember to stay safe, look after yourselves, and if you've got any questions or anything, feel free to reply to the invitation email for this, and I'll be sure to forward you the notes from the session as well. So we'll do a round robin within the next 24 hours for you as well. Have a good day, everyone.